Hi, I'm Michelle Garcia Winner, the founder of Social Thinking, and coming to you right out of a treatment session with a 15-year-old boy who has some massive social anxiety that's pretty long-standing, massive depression diagnosed with, and I believe that's probably related to the sadness upon sadness upon sadness he experiences as his peer group and his teachers do not embrace him in a manner that makes him feel included. In large part, I think, because this guy stands back, his head is down, his body is pulled away, and he does not appear to others as if he is a person who wishes to relate to others, when in fact he really wishes people would relate to him. And he has a late diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder that he received at 14 years old. And that speaks to some weaker social competencies, just his own confidence in how he connects and engages in an ongoing basis in face-to-face interactions, and even emails and text streams. We've been working on some of that stuff. So building social competencies, trying to manage social, come up with strategies to help him manage social anxiety with this ever-present awareness of the sadness that he feels for his lack of being included. And he recently started a new school program, which has been awesome for him, and it has a special social academic class at the high school campus that he is part of, and that also has helped him to meet some people who are, experiencing some of the same things he has. And what's really cool is in the last couple of weeks, there's a kid in his class that has come over to his house twice. Awesome. And my guy felt a lot of stress knowing this kid was coming over, but each time he noticed that his stress abated as the kid stayed, and the second time he came was less anxiety producing as the first. So he actually summarizes that he likes this guy, he feels comfortable with him. On a scale of 1 to 10, his stress is now at about a 3 when he's with this kid. But my guy says his kind of baseline normal when he is even by himself in a room is he feels anxious at about a 1.5 to 2.0 on a 1 to 10 stress scale. So a 3 is pretty good with this kid. So that's great. Sounds great that this kid's coming over to his house. I'm sure some adults were behind the scene helping this to happen, as my guy is a very weak initiator and is not one to invite someone over. So it's great that this happened. And then I followed up as I saw him in session today to say, okay, so now that the kids come to your house, what's happening at school with him? And my 15-year-old says, I don't talk to him. It's like, do you say hi? Nope, I'm not doing anything with them. Why not? He's like, I have tremendous anxiety. The tremendous anxiety holds me back. So in our sessions, we've named our inner coach. He's named his inner coach Joe, and his self-defeater is called Fred, and we figure out who has more power over his brain, Joe or Fred. And while he knows Joe is a more logical voice in his head, Fred takes a lot of his power. So when he even wants to say hi to this kid, Fred says, stay away. So those are some of the background things that we've been figuring out. But today also added one more tool to his toolbox to try to empower Joe, the positive inner coach voice in his head, the one that speaks to him that no one else hears, that kind of helps to navigate or shut him down. Joe helps to push him forward. Fred shuts him down. We talked about, I bet Fred was not as powerful when he was a kid. And in fact, my guy could remember when he was in 2nd grade how he used to run and join other kids to play. But as he's gotten older and probably more self-aware, Fred has become more and more powerful, and now Fred tries to convince him to stay away from everybody. All right, so with that, here's what we added to the tool bag today. And this lesson was largely inspired back in the early 1990s by some books from Thinking Publications, a publisher that unfortunately folded after their incredible leader passed away way too early in life. But I'm still inspired by what I learned from Thinking Publications. And there was a lesson on teaching people to make impressions. What are impressions? How do we make impressions? And so the lesson was very simple, like everything, overly simplified, but that's kind of beautiful too, because it's something we can translate to our clients fairly easily. And the lesson on making impressions was each of us makes impressions by what we do, what we say, and how we look. So that's how we each make impressions. But my guy's got massive social anxiety. I am not going to focus hugely right now on the impressions he is making, because in reality, he's not making great impressions. His body is pulled back, he is not talking, and his hair pretty much covers his face to kind of keep him hiding from others. And so I'm not going to focus on that. That's just going to crank up his anxiety because he doesn't have a great way to cope with that right now. We're working on that. That's the journey in treatment. But here's what we did from this Thinking Publications lesson on impressions was not the impressions he was making, but instead the impressions his brain makes as he sees people in the world, and to really power him up on noticing how actively his brain is making impressions about other people. And as he makes impressions about other people, he also makes decisions as to who is safe to be with, who does he want to be with if he could, who does he want to stay away from. And I was asking him, as we talked about, what kind of impressions does his brain make based on what people do, what they say, and how they look? And he's like, I'm not sure. So first, a role play. He sits at the table, because I find out at school, are you in your own desk, or do you often sit at tables with other kids in your classes? And he says most of his classes, he sits at a table that other kids sit around. So I'm like, great, pretend I'm one of those kids. I walk away from the table. I walk back and I said, I want you to tell me, there's going to be two different ways. I want you to tell me what kind of impressions you're getting from me. The first, I said, here's A. I sit down at the table. I just sit there, I pull my books in front of me, and I don't acknowledge him. I go, okay, that's A. Then I get up, go away from the table, I come back, I sit, as I'm sitting down, I look up at him, and I'm like, hi, Steve. And I'm like, that's B. And I go, how did you perceive me? What was the impression you made about me in A? Did I look friendly? Did I look like I wanted to talk to you? And he said, no. And I go, in B, when I sat down and said, hi, Steve. And then just, as soon as I said hi, I just went back to looking at my book. So at the end of the day, I'm just looking at my book. I go, which impression, how did I appear on the second time? And he goes, you looked friendlier. And I said, okay, would you want to talk to me if I just looked like A all the time? If I came in, put my head down and stared? And he goes, no. And I said, would you want to talk to me if I come in and say hi and look at you? And then even though I'm not talking to you, I said, I just looked, and then I went back to my book. And he goes, I would be more comfortable talking to the B form of you. And I'm like, okay, great. And I go, your brain works really well at making impressions of others. Your brain actually is pretty strong in noticing who is around you and what are they doing. And then I work in a little company. A lot of our kids work in a school, but I don't have kids around me at the clinic. So I took him around my office to notice people and just notice what kind of impression he was making based on what they said, what they did, how they looked, not such a big deal as everyone was dressed professionally, but what they do and how they look. So he went around and we met a lot of different people, or we just stared at a lot of different people. Some of the people, as we walked by, they looked up and smiled. Some of them we approached, they said hi, and then my guy Steve would say hi. Other people we looked at, never looked up, stared at us, never acknowledged us. All right, then we noticed all of that. Some of the people, he learned their names from saying hi to them, came back, sat down, and I go, okay, you just your brain made impressions of all these people you didn't know. You can do exactly this lesson in a school, walking by, walking up to the front office, different things. And I said, so if you needed help at my office and you had if you got Fred under control and Joe was able to let you speak, who would you go up to? It's your opinion based on the impressions you made. Who would you go up to and who would you want to talk to? And he goes, I would want to talk to Sarah. Like, awesome. Now, of all the people, Sarah was very friendly and very sweet, but so were 3 other people in my office who really took time to talk to him. And then he chose Sarah, and I go, that's you making an impression and you deciding that person you want to talk to. That's cool. Sarah came off as friendly. Your brain works really well that way. I want you to go to school, and this week, part of your homework, I just want you to notice the impressions you form based on how other people are behaving, in the sense of what are they doing, what are they saying, how do they look. Notice. That's a huge part of your homework. And then we also talked about that kid who came over to his house and that he hasn't acknowledged for the last week since he's been at the house. And I go, that particular kid, I want you to do one more step. I want you to kind of do that lean in. I want you, when you see him in your class that he's planning on seeing on Tuesday and Thursday, I want you to say hi. But you're going to have to get Fred under control by Joe reminding you how important it is when you notice how much your brain is influenced by the impressions of how people treat you. I want you to also notice the power that you can have when you meet this kid who is at your house, and just by saying hi to him, what kind of impression are you making on him? So we focus a lot today on how his brain makes impressions. We did not make a big deal about the impression he is making to the very end, when it all made sense and he could understand that he has thoughts about others that are very powerful. And now we got to loop it back to, and people have thoughts about him. Who's that one person who he chooses to show he's can be more friendly to? And how does he use strategies, which I won't get into now because it's a whole bunch more, but these social competencies of taking that step to initiate, taking on that risk, managing that discomfort, because there's very little risk in saying hi to a kid that you like who's been to your house. How do you cope with that discomfort of pushing in now and saying hi only to that one person? Think about all of that. Most importantly, really consider how we help our kids to notice their own social thinking before we ever push them to do too much in relating to others, especially when they have very loud self-defeaters telling them that everything is too stressful and they should not try. Let's build a logical social thinking path about their own brain and its perception of others. Signing off. Hope you guys are doing well in the world, trying to figure all this stuff out as I am trying to figure it out too. Take care.